This network for logistics. There is transport network for logistics. There is transport network for supply chain. So this is to define the network requirement first. This is both theory and graphics. First one has to do with network requirements, the scope, the objective, the data that you need. The second is you need to understand the existing network. If you have been moving products, you see what this transport network does is that you are moving things from one point to another. Then you as the logistician in that department, you are asked to come up with your transport network design. For you to come up with your transport network design, there is a need for you to take these instructions in place. The first one is you need to define the network requirements. In the network requirements, there are steps, there are points to follow. You pick up this. The second one is to get the existing network. Existing network for those who have been plying that route. Maybe there are challenges. You need to visit the old network that have challenges. That's the meaning. But if it is a new business, you don't need to analyze existing network. That's why I put if applicable. Can you see if applicable there? That's why I put if applicable. Then you follow these steps. You visualize the network. You take cognizance of the challenges. Then you also determine the network structure. That's after you have the idea of the scope, number one. Number two, if you have been doing the business before, moving things from one point to another, you need to take note of those points that have challenges, the routes, the schedules, the different issues in the process of moving those items from one point to another. Now, number three is that you will now say, okay, you now choose the particular network based on that challenge if it's an existing business. If it is not an existing business, it means that you need to just go straight to the network structure, which is step 3. The network structure, what the network structure does is that it should choose a network type. How many of you know, I thought I discussed hub and spoke and then point to point. There are techniques for, there are techniques that we use for delivery. Hub and spoke, point to point, hybrid network. How many of you are familiar with that? Hub and spoke, point to point, hybrid network. Hub and spoke is you have a centralized place where the products come, then it is like a regional distribution center or a distribution point where other smaller warehouses, smaller units, they go to start their last mile logistics for the delivery process. That's hub and spoke. So the bigger warehouses are the hub, the smaller ones are the spoke. That's the meaning of hub and spoke. Point to point is from the supplier to the buyer, direct. Nothing like you are putting them first in the big warehouse. So if you see this language in the step 3, I want you to understand it. Then the hybrid is both. You do both hub and spoke and the point to point. They are network types, and these network types are speaking directly to the delivery methodologies, to the delivery techniques that you do to deliver to the end users or the customers. So this step 3 is talking about the network structure. So you need to select the method you want to use. That's the choose the network. Then the node type, the destination, whether it is something that has to do with transshipment points, like from country to country, for example. So then number 4, when you discover the number 3, which is the network structure, number 4 is the actual design, where you now put all the things from number 1 to 3. Number 2 is if applicable. If it is not, but most times before you need a network design, you must have started the business. So the aspect of if applicable in number 2 is on, let's say, 5% of logistics and transport businesses. Okay. The number 1, 2, 3. The number 2 is if it is a new business. If it is not a new business, and most times before you talk of network design, transport network design, you must have started the business. Then you want to enhance your network. So you design the network. You design the network. You can use softwares like the TMS, or you can use GIS. You can use it to design and optimize your network. You can do it graphically, then impute it into the TMS software. Then you consider the multiple modes in the design of the network, because that's the actual design point. The routing, that's one of the reasons why I said you need to consider the graphics. For example, the first graphics, you capture what was happening and those challenges with those specifics that I've mentioned from number 1 to step 3 In your step 4, which is the actual design of the network, you should be able to firstly give me the points in your graphics where you have challenges in terms of the route, the mode, the scope, the time, the waste of money. You identify them graphically, you label them. Then you now get solutions to them, like alternative routes, like the issue of where you take, whether you are not using hub and spoke again, whether you are using point to point. You get my point, the network type and co. You need to do some changes. This is what I'm saying. Look at step 3, where you are determining the network structure. Before you determine the network structure, you must have understood number 2, which I said there is a heavy likelihood by 95% that you will need number 2. But I put if applicable in case the business is new. What I'm saying here is that if you pass a particular road and your trucks are usually falling down, you should take notes in the first diagram. The network design, the actual one you are now doing, you will now put it that this is your final network design. Your first graphics will show the challenges, the existing network, showing those challenges. That is number 2. Number 3 is talking about what network you use, whether it is hub and spoke, okay, whether it is point to point. I explained them earlier, whether it is hybrid. Then step 4 is the actual design, where you are now eliminating those challenges to say hub and spoke, because of the bad road, let motorbike be doing my delivery for me, depending on the volume. If the volume is high, check the routes, change the route to another place. All these things I'm saying, you graphically represent them. That's why under the design of network, the number 3 subset is saying that you have to incorporate the routing and scheduling so that you can minimize the costs and maximize service level. If the truck are always falling on a route, show how you have done it to capture a better route. So the next one is you refine it, you evaluate and refine what you have done. Then you implement and monitor the network. So when you see all this, just look at a typical example here. This is a rough work of what I expect you to do in the exam. These are like routes that you take. You will see where we have zonal warehouse, where we have all those things in graphical form. We have them in graphical form, showing the different challenges in the previous existing network. Then the new network, you now do another one that is showing how you have eliminated those challenges to come up with a refined network. You can see what I'm saying. Refine the network. After you evaluate what you have designed. You evaluate what you have designed. You design in number 4. In step 5, you evaluate your design and you do a refined network. Okay? Then you do people to do monitoring for you during operation. You adjust as you move on to use the transport network design for the logistics activities. I don't want to bore you. You see all these ones online. Thank you so much. I hope with these few points of mine, I've been able to teach you very well on logistics system. Once again, my name is Dr. Olayinka Agunloye, Associate Professor of Transport Planning and Logistics. Thank you so much for listening.